Welcome to Mysteries to Die For and this toe tag. I am TG Wolff and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is normally a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. Today is a bonus episode that we call a toe tag. It's the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, and thriller genre. And today's featured release is Calypso Blue by Brian Silverman. And we are actually going to read the first chapter. So let's jump right into this one. It is called The Fate. That's chapter 1 is called The Fate. The book is called Calypso Blue. The Blue Star was just pulling into the dock when I arrived. I parked the Jeep and headed over. Tito, co-owner of the Boya Villa Hotel and head chef of its 4-star restaurant, was already waiting for his delivery, as was Sam Surja of the Yacht Club. I nudged Tito from behind. Tito, whose last name I never learned, turned, grinned, and hugged me with his meaty, tattoo-adorned forearms. "Lenny, hola, and good morning," he said. "Good morning?" Sam Suraj questioned Tito's jovial greeting. "How this a good morning when the Lord lie dying in St. Elizabeth Hospital?" "Yeah, I heard about that," I said. The ferry began to unload passengers and cargo. Janelle Vincent, who worked on the ferry, placed the cases of beer at my feet. "Such a glorious man and songsmith. We cannot lose Lord Ram." I piled the boxes on the hand truck I brought with me. "Any word on his condition?" Suraj looked at me as he assembled the supplies he needed for the bar at the yacht club. He just shook his head. I said goodbye to Tito and wheeled my supplies to the Jeep, piling the boxes in the back. I turned on the radio to the one local AM/FM station, it worked on both frequencies, that broadcast from Garrison. I recognized the distinctive, gravelly voice of Lord Ram as soon as the radio came on. The song was one of his recent calypsos. The voice was weaker and even more gruff than usual. It was hard for me to understand what he was singing about, something to do with the price of goat meat. Like the thousands of other compositions he'd sung over his 60-year career, the goat meat most likely represented something else. What it could be, I had no idea. But I wasn't from St. Pierre or the Caribbean. I was a transplant on this island. What he was singing about was directed to his fellow Peedies, the term used for those living on St. Pierre, as well as those natives who now lived in cities like Toronto, London, and my hometown, New York. "Today it will be Lord Ram all day," the somber, deep voice of the radio announcer intoned. "While we listen, let us pray for a speedy recovery for the King of Calypso, St. Pierre's own. The power of prayer, I know, will heal the great man, and we will all soon, once again, see and hear him entertain us with his genius." I turned off the radio and drove up Windy Hill Road and pulled the Jeep into one of the 3 parking spots behind the sporting place, the bar I opened soon after I arrived on St. Pierre. My partner in the venture, Tubby Levitt, was in his old '09 Toyota in one of the other spots. Before I could get out of the Jeep, Tubby was at my car door. "You heard?" Tubby asked. "How could I not?" I said. "Busy day here, Mr. Len," Tubby said. "You think?" "I know," Tubby said. We loaded up the hand truck with the cases of beer and I wheeled them into the bar. "I already called Mike to tell him to come," Tubby said, "but I think today we need more than Mike." I looked at Tubby, my best friend on the island. Tall and lean, he was the furthest thing from being rotund, despite what his name implied. "What is it I'm missing here?" "The word already out?" he said. I had no idea what word he was referring to, but that was nothing new for me from Tubby and from St. Pierre, where it seemed I was in the dark, even after nearly a decade of living here. "What word is that?" I asked, because Tubby wasn't volunteering anything. "Some say that this place be the fate Lord Ram. This the place to celebrate the great man and send him the vibes that will heal him." Tubby had an answer for most everything, but this wasn't the answer I wanted to hear. "And who is that someone?" I asked, eyeing him suspiciously. "Not me, Mr. Len." "Not you, then who?" "I don't know." But that the word I hear, and you know when I hear the word, it usually accurate. I pondered that. There was a flow of inside information on the island that, despite my years here, I was not privy to. It wasn't that social media or texting was uncommon. It was as common here as anywhere. But information also came in other ways. Maybe from a brief chat with a taxi driver or fisherman, an exchange between open car windows, or at a church service, or during a dominoes game at a roadside rum shop. So despite all the 21st century technological advances that the island shared with the rest of the world, that was how most vital news traveled on St. Pierre. As Tubby predicted, by 11 that morning, the deck was overflowing with customers. Tubby, Mike, who's our third bartender when we need a third, and I were behind the bar quickly mixing up rum punches and opening bottles of beer. Andrew Patrick and Langston Neely, both postal workers, were sitting at the bar, their eyes downcast. I opened a cold bottle of Carib for each of them. "No mail today?" I asked, looking from one to the other. "Sick today," Langston said, apparently speaking for both of them. "Ah, no can work with the Lord lying over at St. Elizabeth," Andrew added. "The people can wait a day for dem damn mail." "They say it's just a matter of time," Langston muttered. "Where do you get your information?" I asked, noticing another group entering the bar. Attendants from St. Pierre's National Park at the base of Mount Hidali. "Minerva, from the hospital where she worked in the kitchen. She texts my wife," Langston said. "What's St. Pierre without Ram?" Andrew asked, no one in particular. "They say the Queen smashed the Lord head with a Dutch pot," Horace Fancy, a retired customs officer, chimed in. Fancy's wife, Owena, who was by his side, shook her finger at her husband. "Who tell you such rubbish?" "I hear it from them two," Fancy pointed down to the Brown brothers, Niles and Edwin, who worked at the island's small aggregate quarry. But they, like everyone else on the island it seemed, was also not working today. Niles nodded. "They say the pot hold a chicken fricassee the Queen made special for Lord." Owena laughed. "I know that rubbish for sure. The Queen can no lift a heavy Dutch pot filled with chicken fricassee and smash the Lord's skull in with it. No, she cannot." "That sassy's stronger than you think," Niles said, his voice louder to compete with the rising decibel level in the bar. "And when a person get fired up with anger, they even stronger. It's the adrenaline, you know." Langston moved between the group at the bar, displaying a photograph on his cell phone. "Barrington just texted me from police headquarters. He say it not a pot of chicken fricassee, but a cook-up with a goat." Fancy shook his head and threw up his hands. "Now I know that not correct because I remember the Lord telling me many years ago that goat meat was for savages. That's what he said. The Lord's words. I remember them like it yesterday." His wife stared at him, open mouth. "Man, Lord Ram tell you no such thing. That man not know Horace Fancy." "The Lord know who I am," he said. "He talked to me at the airport that time he bring in the case of whiskey he buy in Scotland. It was I who clear that for him. Ram know Horace Fancy." "Maybe they quarrel over Queen making a goat cook-up when he wanted chicken in the pot," Langston queried. "So she threw a heavy pot at an old man? She tried to kill the man over what in a Dutch pot?" Owena said, shaking her head in disbelief. "She a big star too. Why she risk all to hurt a man that old?" Another group entered the bar. All the indoor tables were now occupied and the crowd on the deck was reaching overflow capacity. Squeezing through the bodies at the bar was Rondell Miles. Miles, a local music promoter who booked soca acts into the small venues around the island, and who was also one of the producers of the island's low-key Christmas Queso Fest. He was waving at me to get my attention. "As you can see, Rondell, I'm kind of busy in here," I said, leaning close to him. "What is it you want?" "Yes, very busy," he said. "I see yours is the place for those to come to pray for the great man." I smiled and looked around the bar at the bottles of Heineken and Carib and the small glasses of white rum that were blanketing the tables. "I don't see anyone praying in here, Rondell." "Mr. Len, you've been on this island long enough to know that what we PDs show respect to our loved ones is with a fete. We try to turn a sad time into a happy one. And my sporting place has been chosen as the site of the fete to celebrate the grave condition of Lord Ram? Yes, exactly, Rondell said. And who anointed it so? The 2020 Club on Marvell Road is much bigger and better equipped to handle a fete than my place. The 2020 Club never have use for the Lord. You know King Delight, one of the owners of that place, and the King and the Lord, well, you know those two true enemies both on and off the stage. I noticed a group of 6 from Windward Savings had just come through the door and were making their way to the already too-deep bar. I turned to Tubby and Mike. Tubby shook his head and looked down. They closed the banks, Rondell said. And someone spread the word to come here, I asked Rondell. Not just I, Mr. Len. Other people say you have a fete up here on Windy Hill to pay tribute to the magnificent Lord Ram. And you know that sometimes on this little island, events just happen. There is no planning. No planning. I looked at Rondell suspiciously. I knew he had other motives. He was well aware that the sporting place could not accommodate a fete on such short notice. He smiled at me as if he knew what I was thinking, that I was well aware of his plot, and it would not deter him. In a half hour, I can set up tables and add another small bar outside in the back. I get my good friend Edison Alou to work the grill and make his famous spicy chicken. I have Tony X bring his music and play the songs of Lord Ram exclusively. The girls come and help serve and clean up. Nothing to worry about, Mr. Len. We make this a real fete, worthy of the great man himself. We, I said. This was Rondell's way of proposing a business arrangement. Nothing to worry, Mr. Len. I charge at the door, and for that we give them beer, rum punch, and chicken. We'll work it out when this is over. I'm a fair man. This you know. I didn't know that. And with the din of people in my bar clamoring for beverages, I didn't have time to think about it. We needed help. I couldn't turn away the citizens of my adopted island because I wasn't able to handle a crowd. How would that affect my status as a foreign interloper here? Tubby had been listening in to Rondell's proposal, and I looked at him. No choice, he said to me. We must do this. I knew Tubby was right even though I wasn't happy about it. I nodded my compliance to Rondell. He beamed a broad, glistening smile and hustled out. Within the hour, just as Rondell promised, there were tables and chairs set up outside on the lawn surrounding the upper deck. Tony X had his mammoth speakers connected to my electricity, and already the Calypso of Lord Ram was blasting from them. I could smell the charcoal from the hollowed-out oil drum converted into a smoker that Edison Alou used to barbecue his chicken. Rondell brought a few men he knew to help with setting up, getting the beer bottles and other beverages into big coolers filled with ice. It was as if they were all at the ready and waiting for Rondell to give them the cue to begin work, as if there was no doubt that I would approve his proposition. The last piece of Rondell's ploy was to arrive were the girls he promised to help serve and shuttle drinks from the bar to the customers. Sonia Pitts, outfitted in a very short jean shorts and a tight white t-shirt with lettering that read "Miles Apart," Rondell's company, emblazoned across her chest, was one of the girls. Sonia was an ambitious young dancer who was part of the local troupe whose major production was the native recreation shows for cruise boat crowd. The troupe also performed every Monday at the Tamaran Tree Resort manager's cocktail party and on Thursdays at the Limehouse. The two were St. Pierre's largest hotels. Following Sonia inside and wearing the same Hooters-like outfit was, to my surprise, Betta Baptiste. I stopped in the middle of mixing a rum punch to look at her. Her eyes caught mine for an instant and she looked down and away. I finished pouring the rum punches into glasses. When I looked up, she was at the bar, a tray in her hand waiting for me to put the glasses on it. "Paulo is with Mama," she said to me in a soft voice, referring to her young son. I put the rum punch-filled glasses on her tray. She kept looking at me as if trying to gauge if I was judging her in any way on how she dressed. I wasn't. She was a single mother. I understood that a young woman needs to work. Who was I to tell her what the work should be? Well, good, I muttered. Tubby shouted from the other end of the bar that we needed to make another round of rum punches. Betta quickly took the tray of drinks and began to pass them out to those who had paid admission to this impromptu fete. The rush at the bar on this night reminded me of those Friday happy hour $2 Mai Tai specials at Harry's Hula Hut on the Lower East Side in the mid-1990s, one of my first gigs. Tony X had cranked up Lord Ram's biggest carnival hit, Ram de Back Door, on a 15-foot speaker. The music was so loud, I was sure the pounding bass was probably reverberating down Windy Hill Road and most likely could be heard all the way to Garrison Harbor. The music was acting like a siren, a summoning to the sports place to pay tribute to Lord Ram. I was pulling cold Caribs from the ice chest and opening them rapidly when there was a loud, collective clapping and a happy yell over the music. I looked up from my work to see that just about everyone was on their feet, dancing, hands in the air and hips swaying. I opened the sporting place with the idea that it would be the island's first sports bar. We had 4 televisions, 2 over the bar and 2 mounted on the back walls. The main draw, of course, was when there were international sporting events. Grand Slam tennis, the World Cup in soccer, the Olympics, NBA basketball, and championship boxing, along with, sadly in my opinion, the travesty of UFC fighting. But PDs would also come to watch local West Indian cricket, soccer, and track and field. Once we were established, Tubby thought, and I slowly came to agree, maybe we should dedicate a night to music. We decided to do a slow jam Thursdays, where couples could come and listen to soca, reggae, and old school R&B. There would be some dancing on those days, but we never packed the place like it was today, when bodies were right up against each other, moving to a heavy bass sound. I could see Betta dancing in the crowd, holding her serving tray above her head, a smile on her face as she swayed her hips like no other. Sonia was right up against her, moving her own hips, both girls coaxing the others to keep the flow going. "We put on a true fete," Rondell yelled to me as he pushed to the front of the bar, a self-satisfied smile on his face. "Who was I to doubt you, Rondell?" I looked back at Betta and noticed she had stopped dancing. "Keep your mind on your work, old man," Tubby teased as he nudged me. "She out there reveling with the others. You know you can't belly up to her like we can." I looked at him and then quickly looked back at Betta. I wasn't thinking of going belly to belly, back to back with Betta. No, something else caught my eye. I was tall, but I had to rise up on my toes to see better. I wanted to know if what I thought I saw, the pale, bald dome of someone I once knew, someone we both knew, talking to her. And a pale, bald dome would surely stand out in this crowd. I looked around, straining to see from my spot behind the bar, but now Betta and whoever she had been talking to were obscured by the others surrounding them. There was no sight of that pale head. Maybe I imagined it. I realized I hadn't eaten all day and had been so busy I didn't even think about drinking water, despite the intense heat in the crowded bar. For a moment, I felt lightheaded, and my head spinning from both dehydration and hunger. Maybe it was a lack of nourishment that had me seeing things? I glanced through the crowd again. Betta was in the back, working now, gathering empty bottles and glasses. "What's wrong?" Tubby asked, noticing the look at my face. "You good?" "Yeah, I'm good," but I wasn't so sure. Sweat was running down my face. It was hot inside the bar, but not so hot that I should be dripping. Tubby opened a bottle of water for me. "You need to drink," he said. He waved to the girls. I took the bottle and sucked down the water, even though I knew it wasn't that was making me dizzy. It was that I thought I saw a ghost, someone I hadn't seen in years. That I was possibly seeing things had me off balance more than anything. But I never had that problem before. Maybe I needed to get my eyes checked. Or maybe it was my head that was a little off with all the troubling. I wasn't young. No, I was closer to being old than the opposite. And that was becoming a frequent thought in my head. My health, mortality, death itself. They say age is just a number. I needed to keep my mind off my number. When I looked out at the crowd again, I saw Betta, this time pushing through the crowd, a plate of food in her hands. She came up to the bar and put the plate in front of me. A barbecue chicken leg, cabbage, and 2 grilled plantains. "Please eat," she said, looking up at me for just a moment before she disappeared into the crowd. After the food, I felt better. I forgot about what I thought I saw in the crowd and plowed through the evening without further incident. It was a bit past midnight. The fete had been going since 4 in the afternoon. I saw Miles smiling broadly, happy with what he had accomplished, and chatting with 3 men. I gestured to him and he came behind the bar. "We are wiped out here," I said. "The beer, the rum, it's all just about gone. When does this end?" "No worries, Mr. Len," he said cheerily. "I send Dickens down to the garage to pick up more." "You want to keep this going? It's late, Rondell." I stared at him. "How are you going to make money if we keep pouring the drinks?" "We start a cash bar now," he said. "Tell them what they paid up front was good only until midnight." I stared at him. He was serious. I was about to tell him that it was over, that I was closing up, when Superintendent Keith McWilliams of the St. Pierre Police Department moved through the crowd. McWilliams leaned his imposing frame over the bar. "A word, Bonfiglio?" Tubby looked at me, and I at him. We both wondered what this meant. I nodded and walked with him outside. He was in uniform, gray pants with a short-sleeved, gray button-down shirt with a pocket covered by his badge. The pants had red piping down the side seam, and the sleeves of his shirt had thin red stripes. He carried his hat in his hand. "Are we disturbing the peace, McWilliams?" I asked. McWilliams and I had a wary friendship. He knew that, since coming to St. Pierre, I was helping his fellow PDs find justice in places his small department did not dwell. But I tried to work with McWilliams where I could. I knew he was a good man, and St. Pierre was lucky to have him in charge. Still, we jabbed at each other whenever we crossed paths in mutual investigations. Not that I would ever consider myself an investigator. He was a professional. I was nothing more than a bar owner out to do some good in my adopted home. "No, Bonfiglio, a fate is a good thing under the circumstances. But I have news now, and I know your place is where most would be today. I would like to relay that news, if you don't mind, before unnecessary rumors begin to circulate." "You mean like Queen Sassy hitting Lord Ram over the head with a Dutch pot filled with chicken fricassee?" "Exactly, Mr. Len. We do not want that." "Of course," I said. "I'll tell Miles to cut the music and say what you need to say." "Thank you, sir," he said, switching from referring to me by my last name to the more formal use of Mr. Len. We headed back inside. McWilliams stood behind the bar. People were curious and starting to wonder what the police superintendent was doing here. Miles was looking at me. "Tell Tony to cut the music," I said to him. Glanced at me and then McWilliams. "Why?" "Just do it," I said. McWilliams gave Miles a look along with mine, and he scampered off to the DJ setup in the back of the bar. We waited a moment, and then the music was off. The bar was quiet, except for some last laughs and chatter. Soon, all eyes were on McWilliams. "I would like your attention," McWilliams said to the crowd in his deep baritone. He waited a moment to continue. Almost immediately, the bar was silent. "I would like you here to be the first to know that at 10:49 this evening, the great Lord Ram has passed from this life to the next. St. Pierre's most magnificent citizen is dead." There were gasps from the crowd, and then soft sobbing could be heard. "She kill he!" someone yelled from the back of the bar. That started more grumbling and shouts. "Quiet now," McWilliams said. His face was stern as he surveyed the crowd, and the murmurs and chatter immediately stopped. "Lord Ram died from an accidental fall in his home. There will be more official details in the days to come, along with the news of his funeral arrangements once they are determined by his family. Thank you for celebrating the great man. Please peacefully respect his memory and those of his loving survivors." Almost before McWilliams finished speaking, people were starting to flow out of the bar. I knew McWilliams well enough by now to guess his motives. He hoped that after hearing his statement, when the word would quickly begin to spread about Ram's death, there would be no wild claims of murder or anything else. But McWilliams also understood that there would still be rumors and doubt. He was used to that on St. Pierre. Like anywhere else, the PDs were often skeptical of their government and what they were told. McWilliams put his hat on and came out from behind the bar. He nodded at me and left. The bar was emptying. People were whispering, some were crying, and in less than 10 minutes, everyone, except for Rondell Miles' crew, were gone. Soon, Tony X had his speakers packed up and loaded onto his truck. On his way out, Edison Alou said he would come for his grill tomorrow. Miles came behind the bar with a cash box under his arm and a wad of Eastern Caribbean bills in his hand. He gave me the bills. "If you don't think that's enough, you just tell me, Mr. Len. Don't be shy. I always want to be fair." "I'm sure you do, Rondell," I said, but I wasn't planning on counting the money. After replenishing my beer and rum supply, whatever was left over would go to Lord Ram's favorite charity, and if he didn't have one, I would find an appropriate donation. I saw Sonia Pitts waiting by the door for Miles. I wondered for a moment if Miles was going to drop her off and then go home to his wife and children, but I knew better than to wonder too long on that. Betty came back to the bar and looked at me. "You worked very hard," she said in her quiet voice. I shrugged, remembering how much harder I used to go at it back in the days when I was hustling to make the bars I owned in Brooklyn work. "I'll drop Tubby at his place and then take you home," I said, coming out from behind the bar. Tubby's wife, Lisa, had come earlier with a friend. She left after a couple hours to go be with her young children, taking Tubby's car. I could feel Tubby's eyes on me when I said I would take Betta home. Whenever he pushed on how I really felt about her, I told him it was nothing more than friendship. Tubby, however, was very intuitive. He was good at reading people. And I was an easy read. He knew there was more, that our history was about friendship, but underneath it all, there was a quiet, unstated, and unconsummated yearning. No, Betta said, almost anxiously. She shook her head at me. "It is out of your way, Leonard." There, she said it. Leonard. Only Betta could get away with that without a growl from me. I'd drop her at her home, Rondell Miles said as he moved, smiling to join Sonia at the door. "She on the way. For you, Mr. Len, up on the East Road, is out of the way." Betta looked at me and nodded. It was almost as if she was relieved that I was not going to drive her home. I wondered about that. Tubby and I made sure the bar backlights remained on, but everything else, the overhead fans and televisions, were off. The back deck door was locked, and we double-locked the front door on the way out. Tubby got into my Jeep. He sat back in his seat as I headed down Windy Hill, not saying anything. I'm sure he was as tired as I was, but that never stopped him from talking. "Why McWilliams come and tell us that news?" he asked me after the silence. I glanced at him. "Why? That man not come to the fete to announce Ram die unless he have a reason." "Maybe he didn't want people to spread unfound rumors," I said. "I guess he wanted to make it clear that Lord Ram did not die, under unusual circumstances." "Now the people do the opposite, Mr. Len, and McWilliams know that. He comes so we all can speculate more on how Lord Ram really died." "What are you talking about? You need some sleep, Tubby." "I need sleep, yes," he said, "but I know that McWilliams come to our place to put doubt in others' minds about how Ram died. Everyone there know that." "See now, Tubby, what am I supposed to think about that? McWilliams comes to tell us that Lord Ram died peacefully from natural causes, and you say he did that as kind of a, subliminal message that he didn't." "Subliminal, yes, that's the word. Exactly, Mr. Len." "Are you trying to make my head explode?" He hissed at me again. "How many years you live here and you still don't understand us? You find out soon what I'm talking about." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Mr. Len. It mean nothing. Just remember I talk to you here, about this when you come to me for some help." I looked at him and then back at the very dark road in front of me. I pulled up in front of Tubby's house. There was a light on outside near the entrance, and I could see a light through the front window into his kitchen. His wife and children, I assumed, were sleeping. Tubby started to get out of the Jeep. "Did you notice any other white men at the bar tonight?" "White men?" he asked. "Like you?" "Yeah, like me, wise ass. I know we stand out in a crowd here. You must have noticed." "Besides your pale skin," he said, "I only see that Marcus from the med school, who date Corinne Tonsil, who work at the hospital. He have very light skin, and not as pale as you, and he not white. Why you ask me this?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "See you tomorrow. No rush. I expect we won't get any business till later." He nodded. "With Ram's death, people done with celebrating until his funeral. But remember what I tell you about McWilliams." How can I forget? I drove off, heading east to my house. All right, that is the first chapter from Calypso Blue by Brian Silverman. So it is an amateur sleuth mystery. So New York transplant Led Bonfiglio carved out a business on the island of St. Pierre with a sports bar. Now the Marine veteran is finding a place in the community as the man people come to when they have problems. Maurizio Loffredo has returned to the island, to the wife he abandoned, and he's brought trouble. An art investment, a deal gone sideways, Len agrees to help Maurizio recover stolen merchandise in hopes of squaring the deal. But hope, as they say, is not a strategy. Bottom line, Calypso Blue is for you if you like amateur sleuths with an island flair. All right. So I know you think that you didn't meet Maurizio Loffredo, but you saw the top of his pale bald head. So that's, yeah, we've met him a little bit. Calypso Blue has two mystery plots. So the book begins and ends with the death of Lord Ram, which you heard quite a bit about in Chapter 1. An iconic Calypso singer and a favorite son of St. Pierre. The death of 95-year-old from a fall where he struck his head resounds through the island community. Officially, this is an accident, but Superintendent Keith McWilliams seeks Len out to look into it. He knows that it won't change the official story, but it just might put his own mind to rest. The middle of the book focuses on the return of Maurizio Loffredo and the trouble he brings. A few years back, Maurizio came to St. Pierre, fell in love with Betta, who you met, married her, and they opened a bread shop. While she was pregnant, he bowed to his family pressures and returned to Italy, leaving her only monthly checks to raise their child. A case of vermouth is delivered to the Sporting Place sports bar. The label of each has a scene of St. Pierre that could only be made by someone who had lived there. Confused about the delivery, Len and Tubby store the case away and continue on. Soon after, those bottles are stolen. Re-enter Maurizio, the sender of the bottles. After a reunion with his wife, he goes to Len for the bottles with the story of a business investment scheme that has turned dangerous. Worried for Betta, Len agrees to help, but recovering the bottles is a deadly proposition. This part of the story has absolutely strong thriller elements. So the island setting of St. Pierre, a fictional former British colony, absolutely saturates the story and is an outstanding strength of the book. I really think you got a strong sense of that here in the first chapter. The island's culture, food, and traditions give a unique pace to the story that can't be found in urban mysteries or small-town cozies. Author Brian Silverman spent over 30 years writing about travel, including the Caribbean. The depth of his knowledge and appreciation for the culture really shine through. This is a whodunit mystery, if anyone did it. Oh, I think I put that line in the wrong paragraph. Well, you all know what I meant. Len Bonfiglio is our amateur and somewhat reluctant detective. He is a bar owner, but he is also a Marine vet and has trained and fought in martial arts. Len is the kind of detective who is far more likely to fight his way out of a corner than shoot his way out. He's a likable hero. I think you also got a sense of that from the first chapter. We learn he has a backstory, and in Calypso Blue we see more of what drove him to leave his own family in New York City. The supporting cast are interesting counterpoints with individual personalities that keep them distinguishable. Tubby is Len's business partner and the man who knows everyone on the island. Superintendent Keith McWilliams is the law, but he isn't a waste like in some other stories. In this case, in Calypso Blue, he's Len's client, so he doesn't play a very large role in the investigation. And then there's Betta, the friend who Len wishes could be more. The bad guys here fall into two groups. So the suspects in Lord Ram's death are locals, the men and women who surround his life, including his wife, the artist known as Queen Sassy. We get a peek into the separation of classes on St. Pierre, and a lesson on how appearances and reality can be very different. The suspects in Maurizio's case are mafioso type from Northern Europe. Who they are, where they are, and what they are doing is revealed one layer at a time. Len does drive these stories. In both cases, he could choose to stop investigating and the story would end. Life would go on, for good or for bad. It's his sense of justice and his drive for knowledge that doesn't let him back away, even maybe when he should. So standing at the back of the book and looking to the front, the logic of both stories is solid. The action of the bad guys are consistent with their goals and motives, and Len moves in a straight line so he can disrupt that. And while the logic was in check, I did end up with questions on the resolution of Lord Ram's case. Some readers will be like me, feeling like they left with more questions than answers, while others will be fully satisfied. But as I write this review, the questions are still there, but maybe they don't matter. It was clear that Lord Ram was not the pillar St. Pierre and others held him up to be, and perhaps that is enough. Calypso Blue is the second in the Len Bonfiglio mystery series, and while both books have the same lead characters, supporting characters, the mysteries are completely independent, so there is no issue with reading Calypso Blue independently, but I truly did enjoy Freedom's Drop and would highly recommend that too. Calypso Blue is released from Down and Out, is promoted by Partners in Crime Tours, and is available from online book retailers. The link to the Amazon is in the show notes. So, let me introduce Brian Silverman. His writing career has spanned over 30 years. He has written about travel, food, and sports for publications including New York Times, Saveur, Caribbean Travel and Life, and The New Yorker, and many others. His short fiction has appeared in numerous publications, including Mystery Tribune, Down and Out Magazine, and Mystery Weekly. His stories appeared in the Best American Mystery Stories in 2018 and 2019, and the Best American Mystery and Suspense Stories of 2021. Freedom Drop is his first published novel. Obviously, Calypso Blue is his second. He lives in Harlem, New York with his wife Heather and his sons Louis and Russell. Links to Brian's website, which is briansilvermanwrites.com, is in the show notes, as well as his social. If you're wondering what to read after you finish Calypso Blue, Partners in Crime Tours is your ultimate destination for all things mystery, crime, thriller, and cozy. Since 2011, they've been working to fill bookshelves with gripping and heart-pounding reads. Discover new mystery series and connect with other fans with Partners in Crime. Look up Partners in Crime Tour on the web or your favorite social media. And authors, whether you're looking to promote your latest thriller, discover a new mystery series yourself, or connect with fellow fans of a genre, PICT has you covered. Check out their promotion options that come with the personal attention of a dedicated coordinator. Come back to us next week for our next episode in Season 8, Anything But Murder. A Frame Job is our murderless crime in The Joker is Wild by Deborah H. Goldstein.